Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so we have just discussed the first video of use of language task, and now we are going to do the paper. We have discussed all these things, we have done all these exercises. You can just give a little more time to these and try to do them yourself. You will just come up with more different meanings of these words. Now there is just one assessment objective for this question. There is just one assessment objective for this question, and that is demonstrate understanding of how writers achieve effects and influence readers by using different words and different phrases. Then here this is, we have done this part, and these questions, they start from here. These are 5 questions, and if you have a close look at this, you will see that this child couldn't score 16 out of 16 in first part comprehension task, where most of the students, they think that that is the easier one, but he couldn't score 16 there. I think he scored 14. But here 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 2E, look at this, he got 9 marks here. That means that this part, use of language, is not that difficult as usually students think of. Then have a look at this one. Yes, this also, see, this child got, look at, he got less marks. This child scored 16 here but 7 here. He couldn't get 2 out of 2 here, and here he got 2 out of 3. So that means that a student who scored less marks in comprehension task got full marks in use of language task, whereas a student who got full marks in comprehension task couldn't score full in second part, that is use of language task. So you basically have to pay attention to all comprehension tasks and use of language tasks, and you need to attempt them in a separate way, in a different manner. So this student might be good in explaining things, that's why he got 9 out of 9 here, and this one he might be good at comprehending things and comprehension tasks, so he got 16 there. But you can get, and give it a chance, go for 25 out of 25 in comprehension. If you can achieve this feat, if you can do this, I have no doubt, if you get 25 out of 25 in comprehension, I think you can easily go for A star or A. Then question number 2, we are starting it here now. Question number 2, that has 9 marks. We have this first one, read this sentence from the text. Usually in these 5 questions, one question is read this sentence, and sometimes one question is read this extract, but it can be read this sentence also. Here it is read this sentence. When you are reading this, you need to check the marks also. This has 1 mark. Read this sentence from the text. Later that month, I was nearly proved wrong. Line number 41, you will go back to line number 41, you will read that, and then you will try to make up your answer, that okay, what is the writer talking about? Basically, what is the story behind all this sentence? What does the writer want to suggest to us about what is going to happen next? This is the focus of the question. Basically, the question is, he says later that month I was nearly proved wrong. So what happened later that month that proved the writer wrong? So you have to read all that part, and maybe the part that comes after that, maybe line number 45, 46, 47, you have to read that so that you can get the idea that what happened then. If you get that, then only then you can answer this question. So what does the writer want to suggest to us about what is going to happen? Now this what is also important. What is going to happen? So you are not going to answer that later that month I was nearly proved wrong. What does the writer want to suggest to us, that why was he proved wrong? We are not going to answer that why was he proved wrong. We are We have to answer that what is going to happen next. So what is that event, what is that action, what is that activity that is going to prove the writer wrong. Now we are clear about the question, that basically what is our focus. Let's have a look at the mark scheme. Read this sentence from the text. Okay, what does the writer want to suggest to us? An answer is Odin, that is a raven, a crow. Kavva is going to leave, flies away, disappears, escapes, is lost. Something will make Odin leave. So basically, this is the action, this is the activity, this is the event that is going to happen later that month. And here at this point, the question is about what. So you have to answer this, that this sentence is basically suggesting towards that event that is happening after that. So focus of the question must be very clear. If you are not clear that what has been asked, then you won't be able to write correctly. This question asks candidates to consider the structure of narrative. Basically you need to understand the narrative, the story here in this question. The sentence later that month I was nearly proved wrong requires candidate to refer back to the previous sentence to read about what Rex was nearly proved wrong. His belief that Odin was never going to leave them. His belief that Odin was never going to leave them. This was correctly expressed in many ways. Now, because this is examiner report, so this examiner is discussing students' responses. So he's saying that students rightly expressed this in this way, that Odin did leave them, he escaped, he flew away. This was the action that happened and that proved the writer wrong, that Rex wrong. He became lost. Some responses incorrectly slipped into narrative about the storm without identifying Odin's disappearance, or randomly referred to a climax or turning point which did not recognize the prediction that Odin would leave them. So this is mostly when I discuss this question, I tell you that the words like this is a turning point in the story, this is the writer is trying to suspense by using these kinds of words are used in these questions, in all 5 questions that we have in use of language tasks. But this question is very simple. There's no need to make things or there's no need to make things dramatic or try to get like do not need to make things complex by if there is a simple thing and you think no, if that we can't simple, I should come up with something that I should prove that there is a kind of it is a kind of a turning point. It is the writer is trying to creates a kind of a suspense. Sometimes things are simple, you need to answer them in a simple manner, and that is one such question in which there's no need to give a complex answer. Simple answer: he proved wrong because that raven Odin left them or disappeared. Simple, that is the answer. Again, next one, read this sentence from the text. Usually they, instead of sentence, they usually in 2 questions you do not use the same word sentence, but this time they have used same. In this question this is read this sentence, and in the previous they read this sentence. Usually in this question they use the word extract. Okay, and because that is an extract, that is not just one sentence. But maybe there's no full stop, that is a long sentence, that's why they have written the sentence. Usually they write the word extract there. So we'd expected the worst, but the scene okay, sorry, this word is about 2 impression. This is 2 impression questions. Okay, when you are going to prepare these questions, you need to remember that there is this question in which you need to answer that what are 2 impressions that the writer is trying to convey through these words or this sentence or something like that. So this is 2 impression questions. I called it 2 impression question. Okay, so you need to remember is 2 impression question. We'd expected the worst, but the scene at dawn was a picture of carnage. When we look for these impressions, We need to look for strong words in that specific text. Now, this word carnage is a strong word for me. Carnage means bloodshed. When something is in great destruction, there is a massacre. This word carnage is used there. Then, so when there are in this whole extract, you can have 4 or 5 impressions, but you need to come up with 2 only. The for me, I have to choose, I'll go for this word carnage. Like an army of giants had wreaked havoc outside. Very strong words. It is the word army of giants is also giving a kind of an impression that this is a kind of a war going on. Army is giving us an impression. This word havoc means great destruction. It is giving us a kind of an impression. Then most of the trees in the, sorry, I can't see it, so I'm removing it. Okay, so most of the trees in the area had been blown over. This word blown over shows that the wind is very strong. This blown over is giving us an impression of a strong wind. The whole world seemed torn apart. This is also giving us an impression of strong wind. And unfriendly and unfamiliar, that means this unfamiliar word is also giving an impression that the people of that area, they are not used to that kind of, most of the trees in the area, that kind of wind. We'd expected the worst, but the scene at dawn was a picture of carnage. So these are different words, like army, yes, carnage, army. You can underline different words that you just get fascinated with. Underline them and then ask yourself that if I have to come up with 2 impressions, can I explain these words properly? Then try to explain those words. Havoc, then blown away, torn apart, unfamiliar. These are different words and they can give you an impression. Now let's, okay, this is the mark scheme. 1 2 3 4 5 6. So it shows that they can find 6 impressions in this extract here, or this sentence here. So let's see what are these. And because it has 2 marks and you have, look at this, it has 2 marks. I didn't, okay, I do not have the lines here, but when you are writing an answer, write it like this: first impression, second impression, or just put a bullet here and write 2 impressions very clearly. Do not write it in the same place and in one sentence. Write them separately, 2 different impressions, in 2 different lines. That will just give a kind of an impression to the examiner that you have understood the text well and you know what are impressions. So do it that way, impress the examiner. Look at this then: devastation, ruin, destruction, chaos, catastrophe, great damage, huge mess. All this is explanation of the word carnage. Like a battlefield, the army of giants. It is a war. When we were discussing it, I told you this. So it is a kind of a battlefield war. Army of giants part. Folklore, that means it is a kind of a story, mythology. Fiction, it is a story that is told by grandparents. So that is a kind of story that everybody knows, like a bedtime story. Trees are toppled, knocked over, vulnerable, defenseless, alien, unnatural, unrecognizable, strange, landscape scene. Then it was hostile, violent, dangerous, monstrous, massive, very strong. They were frightened, they were shocked. Now, this one thing that I felt here, that when now right now we haven't read the text and I do not have the text in front of me, but once you are going to answer any such thing, you will have the text with you. So you will read that why this all destruction, what has happened. Is this a kind of a wind that has blown, and uh, all that has happened, and now they are comparing it to a kind of a destruction that an army can do, or what is that? So you need to read that part. I think they are talking about that strong wind there, but I'm not sure because I haven't read the text. So you need to read that, and after that you have to write your answer, and you will get all these impressions. And how you are going to write it, okay, we have this also. Let's look at this. In this this is examiner report. Candidates performed very well and many were able to provide true credit worthy impressions. Okay, now rest assured, I'll show you answer scripts also, and in those answer script you'd be able to see that how the students are, like candidates reply or their responses, that how they are answering these questions. Then you, before your paper, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that in another video, but first I'm doing these basic things. Once you are clear about them, after that we will move towards the answer scripts. The best responses focused on individual images or vocabulary such as the impression of devastation or chaos conveyed by the words carnage, havoc, or the impression of a battle or war suggested by army. Some responses gave an overall impression of the extract, the storm. Yeah, oh, okay, so here we got it. The storm. It is about a storm. Was violent or terrifying. And this too was credit worthy. Less successful responses were characterized by repetition of the text. And my dear kids, never repeat the words of the text in your answer. Okay, once you have this here, in this use of language task, do not repeat these words in your answer. Remember this thing. If you do, that means you are not going to get marks for that. Simply go for explanation. So the storm was violent or terrifying, less successful, responsive, or repetition. It was worse than they expected, or everything was torn about. But these did not evidence understanding of the effect of the language. So this is the way you are going to answer it. That the storm was so strong that it had created great destruction. It had ruined everything. It was a great catastrophe. It has done great damage. So this is one impression. Second thing, you can show that you can also write that it was a hostile, violent, danger storm. It was monstrous. It was massive. Or the place where it had blown, it had blown the trees away. It had toppled the trees are toppled, knocked over, or defenseless against such kind of a storm that was that strong. Or the place there looked like a battlefield, or it looked like that two armies had been fighting there for a very long time or the whole night. So this is the way you are going to write the impressions. Now, so this was two impression questions, our very own two impression question. Then explain C part. This is one such question in which in which you have to compare two words with each other. Like I always give, that is my favorite example. I always give you the example of pause and stop, walk and toil, or mammoth and huge. Okay, so usually in this question, it is out of these five questions, there is one such question in which you have to explain, or you have to compare two words with each other. Why the writer is using the, here it is, explain why the writer uses the word lifted rather than moved in the expression. It had been lifted from its concrete blocks and tossed onto its sides. So this question has 1 mark, and you have to be just check the marks. So lifted and moved, you have to explain the difference of these words. And there was, you have done in your midterm, there was why the writer has used the word each instead of Both. I do not exactly remember, but there was something related to each. The why the writer is using each instead of both or something like that. This was a question like this. So two questions, they should be compared with each other. Now let's have a look at this. Is simple. Let's have a look at this mark scheme. Um, so there are three possible justifications or three possible explanations of this question, and you can write any one of those. One is the writer is using the word lifted instead of rather than moved, or instead of moved, because of the upward movement. The word lifted shows an upward movement. The trees were pulled up, they were uprooted, they flew up in the air, they were like carried out of the ground. That basically shows that the wind was very strong. So okay, second thing is to show the strength, power, force of the wind. The wind was so strong, powerful and forceful. Or to show how easy it was for the wind to move it. So this is the difference between why the writer is using the word lifted. So you can use any one of them. Explain the difference of the two words. Now examine the report. Few responses recognize the implications of lifted to suggest upward, which is not conveyed by the word moved. Consequently, several responses describing the cage being pushed out. Okay, simply I'm stopping it here. Conveyed by the word lifted, there was more success explaining an alternative correct answer, that the word lifted showed the force or strength of the wind which could lift a cage from concrete blocks. So you can stop the video here, you can take a screenshot, you can read it yourself. Basically the lifted showed, by using the word lifted, the writer is trying to convey the strength of the wind, or is trying to tell that there was a kind of an upward movement that the word moved cannot convey. D. Now read this sentence from the text, and remember this question has 2 marks. Okay, there is no mention of two things. Let's see. Julie and I had already made a brave start on rebuilding the sheds, mournfully avoiding the remains of the cage. And question is, what effect? Basically, if you remember, you used to do those explanation with reference to the context, or tashri questions in your Urdu. So this is something like that, like explaining that what is the writer or what is the poet trying to say. So just keep that thing in your mind also. What effect does the writer suggest by using the word brave to describe Julie and Rex start on rebuilding the sheds? Now this is one such question in which there is no mention of two impressions or two effects, but this question has 2 marks. So when you are answering this question, keep this word, this number 2 in your mind. And when you are writing, what effect does the writer suggest? When you are writing the effect, this word brave, you need to write 2 effects so that you can score 2 marks. If you will write one effect of the word brave, you will just get 1 mark. Clear about it, be clear about it. Okay, so in this question there is no mention of 2, but you have to write 2 because the points, the marks that you have, they are 2. So let's have a look at the mark scheme. So one is they were strong, they were courageous, and the word brave is telling us that they were strong and they were courageous. Okay, simple, very nice. It was a huge task, it was difficult, not easy, it was a challenge for them, needed a lot of courage, a lot of effort, had a lot to do. That's why they were doing that. The word brave, so you will just write it like this. The writer is trying to suggest by using the word brave that though both of them, or they were strong and courageous, or because they were facing a challenge, there was a huge challenge in front of them, it was not an easier task, and they needed courage for that. It can be this, or they were showing optimism, being positive, confident, moving on, overcoming sadness. So because they were trying to cope up with their sadness, they were trying to show that they are not going to give up. They were showing that they are resilient, they are determined, they are facing the problem that they have, that is there in front of them, or they are making a fresh new start, they want to restart. You will understand all these things once you have read that text. Okay, so if right now you feel that, okay, what is this about, so I haven't read the text, so you haven't read the text. Once you have read that, you will be clear about all these things. So word brave is conveying their courage. It is telling us that it is a huge task, and next thing is that they are trying to be positive, or they are trying to restart. So these are the things. Then marks examiner report. Many candidates scored at least 1 mark by providing a synonym for the word brave in context. Rex and Julie were courageous. Now they have given this one answer, courageous or strong. So this is the synonym. So you got your 1 mark here. Or they showed strength. Successful responses recognize the positive connotation of the word and developed ideas for a 2nd mark. See, you will get 1 mark if you will show one effect. If you want to get 2 marks, you will have to give a second connotation also. So second connotation was that the writer is trying to suggest that a positive connotation of the word developed ideas. 2nd mark by, for example, yes, that Julie and Rex were determined, they overcame their sadness, were making fresh start. So all these things we have just discussed. It was also correct to suggest that the task ahead was difficult, requiring a lot. So here in this question there is just one point, that any word they have given, like if here they have given brave and you have to check the marks, it has 2 marks. So you will come up with 2 effects of this word brave, not just one. And you can say that, okay ma'am, there was no mention of 2. Yes, there is no mention of 2, but there you can see that there are 2 marks. So you can get 1 if you can get 2 marks if you come up with 2 effects. If you just come up with 1, you will get 1 mark. Okay, and here is the last question, and this is one such question that I had been explaining the whole year, and still students get it wrong. And in my opinion, this is the easiest question. Now look at this. They have given you this whole text. Okay, we have from week, cheaping, reveal, then to the taken home. I'm not going to read all of it. We are going to read the question. The question is identify one example. First thing is one example. Then second thing is identify. If you remember yesterday in the comprehension task, I told you that identification means copying. Identification means, okay, let me show you. Okay, there it is, or here it is. This is called identification. You do not have to write it. Still, there are students who, instead of identifying this example is written here. You have to write the example in this line, and you have to identify the example. That's why they have given you this paragraph. Remember, identifying the example means copying the example. Now, copying the example about what? You need to be very clear about the focus of the question. First thing is identify, second thing is one example, next thing is of what? Of how the writer uses language effectively to describe Odin. This is the focus. So you will read this whole text, and you will find out, you will take out the examples that are describing Odin. And by doing that, once you have that example, I think it is 29 minutes. I'm not reading the whole example. I am moving towards the mark scheme. The example, we will take out one example from this, like it is Mm, example: weak cheeping revealed the smallest shadow. A bedraggled Odin perched precariously at the top of the tallest tree, shivering violently, seriously shaken. With a croak of relief, he dropped from the tree like a bundle of black rags. Indestructible Raven was more than willing to be scooped into my arms. All these are examples. Like if I simply write here seriously shaken, that is also example that describes this. So when you have identified this example, you just take it out from there. You can write it in the quotation marks also. Seriously shaken. It can be one word, it can be two words, it can be one phrase, it can be 5 words, it can be 6 words, or it can be longer than that. But remember, go for an example that is interesting, that is strong, you can explain it in 2 words. And secondly, this is one such example that is you are not just taking it out and pasting it here without giving it any thought. You need to choose an example that in your opinion is the best one and that you can explain well. And it can be one word, it can be I've explained how it can be. But the thing that I'm trying to tell here is, do not write very long example. My limit is 5 words. I would advise you, do not choose an example that is more than 5 words. Do not, please, you must not, because that would be a problem. You won't be able to explain that well. So go for examples that are of 5 words, 4 words, 3 words, 2 words, even 1 word. But do not write an example that has 10 words in that. Okay, that is my advice to you. Next thing is explanation. For explanation, they have given you 1 2 3 4 lines, and when you are explaining 3 lines, or okay, you can write in all these 4 lines also. But explanation, sometimes I've seen that students, instead of writing 2 3 lines, they write 5, they write a kind of an essay here in the name of explanation. Do not do that. Simply explain the example that is given here, and 3 lines are more than enough. Or maximum, just fill this part that they have given. That's it, right? In this, an explanation means, now let's see how you are going to explain it. If we are writing, 1 minute, seriously shaken, you have written, once you have written the example seriously shaken here, you will get 1 mark. You got your 1 mark here once you have written this. Now 2 marks for explanation. So extremely, very, terribly, stressed, in shock, scared, traumatized, upset, extremely stressed, 2 takes, very shocked. Okay, so when you are going to explain that, what will you do? You now, I don't have the context in my mind, but when you are writing, you will have the Achilles shaken by his experience. He wasn't in a trusting mood, at the risk of appearing a complete idiot. So you will write here that Odin was completely stressed, and he was in a very bad state. He couldn't, or he was in a state of shock. He was traumatized. Now traumatized by what? After this you can give, just explain it by the context that you have there. Or he was upset by the experience that he had recently, that he has the experience that he recently had, and he was not in a state in which he could move or do something like that. So we are going to explain it in, and that's it. Just stop it here, read all that, and the sentences that are the points that are given in front of the examples, you can just write them. You can develop them into 2 3 sentences, and then that is enough for you. So in this last question, identifying example, there's just one thing that you will write. You will take out the example that is related to the just check the focus of the question, take out the example, paste it here, get your 1 mark, and then describe it, explain it with the help of the context that is given here. And you can also write it like this, that the writer is trying to convey the condition of the bird. He is telling us that the bird, after leaving his house, after leaving that place, is in a state of shock, is traumatized, is unable to speak, something like that. And then you are done. You can write, you can use these words that the writer is using, very strong language here. The writer is trying to convey his appearance. That's it, 35 minutes video. That is too long, but that is very important. Do watch it, complete your first part, comprehension and use of language, and then let me know, give me a thumbs up in our group, and I'm waiting for that. I'll be back with a video about, or a video on summary writing and short response. See you then. Allah Hafiz. Goodbye. Take care.